Welcome to Palace Penguins United Big Book Study. This week I'm pleased to reintroduce Max D, who's kindly come along to continue with the Big Book Study. Over to you, Max.
Thank you, Lois, for your service, as always, and everybody in the background that's being of service, everybody that's read this morning. Thank you so much. My name is Max, and I'm an alcoholic, and it's great to be here. Second day in a row. Alan and I were just talking about the fact that yesterday morning kind of confused us a little bit because we thought it was Saturday, and it wasn't. It was Friday. It was just... Anyway, it doesn't matter. Here we are. It's Saturday morning yet again, and we're back into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So it's great to be here with everybody. We're continuing on our little journey through working with others. We're on page 95, very top of the page. And who knows where we're going to get to this morning with it all. I haven't really got any recap to do up to this point. I think I'm just going to get straight into it. Let's just get stuck straight in. There doesn't need to be any context this morning because the first little line that we're going to cover is very clear. I just love the precision of what they say in here. And I love working with others because as I go through this each week with you guys or with any sponsee at any point, I giggle at some of the things because it's like, yep, these things happen. Our friend Lorraine talked about it last week. I can't remember the 3 words that you used. It's all about that busting the myths of sponsorship, the misconceptions, and maybe you can help us out with that and put it into the chat, Lorraine, that working with others is the chapter around busting the misconceptions, the myths, and what our preconceptions were. And actually, oh, good, thumbs up. Everything that our misconceptions, preconceptions were about what sponsorship is, it's quite the opposite is proved in the chapter working with others. And that's why it's so incredibly important for those that are working with others to understand what's set out in here, because it is such clear-cut directions and masterly detail. And for anybody that hasn't got a sponsor yet, it's good to hear this stuff, because expect this to be the things that happens when you meet with your sponsor and go through it. So when they are being clear-cut and giving you that direction, don't think that it's just you, that this is happening too. This is being given to everybody. Okay, and we'll talk more about that as we go through. So let's get started. Unless your friend wants to talk further about himself, do not wear out your welcome. Yeah. It's a repeat instruction from the top of page 90. Do not waste your time. If someone does not want to talk about their situation with you, you do not need to drag the conversation out of them. They're not ready. So why would you waste your time on somebody who isn't ready when there's a whole tranche of people that you can continue to speak to who are desperate for the help? Remember always, I always have, and it tells us this at the bottom of page 31. And I, by the way, each week as we do this within working with others, I make no apology for anything that I'm repeating, because it's important that we hear these things over again. And it's just coming from the repeat of the information that is in the book, that ability that the first 100 have to emphasize and re-emphasize information that's important. If somebody doesn't want to talk about themselves, I ain't here to convince you that you need this program. Okay, convinced meaning moved by the evidence. If you are suffering and don't know what to do, you need to become convinced yourself, like it says at the bottom of page 31. You need to be moved by the evidence. That evidence being what's going on in your life at this moment with the powerlessness and the unmanageability. And that being the evidence of the things that are happening within your life, maybe the self-pity, the bitter morass that's stretching all around you. You need to be moved by the evidence of all of that your way of living isn't working. And that we, those who have had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, who have recovered, have the solution that you need. So There you go. So don't outstay your welcome. Give them a chance to think it over. No worries, you've got my number. I'm here when you need. The number of telephone numbers that I have and many of you on here have in your phones that you don't even know who the people are. You've had that one conversation, but you keep the number because it's inevitable at some point one of them, if not many of them, are going to recall. And you know that the way that I work with this is like they phone and they say, oh, I'm sorry, no sorry required. I've been waiting for you, So the moment that you leave the fellowship and you think that you can do this by yourself, as per some of the little tests, for want of a better word, that are set out and more about alcoholism, you might have decided you're going to go and try and drink like a lady or a gentleman. You might try to think that you're going to step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. You might think that you're going to try and do it for a year by yourself on your own willpower and self-control. But we'll be waiting for you. Because if you are one of us, it's inevitable that you'll come back. And it's a very beautiful thing. But if you do stay, let him steer the conversation in any direction he likes. That's where you get the gauge as to where we take the conversation to. If he wants, like it has said on the previous pages, if the individual, your prospect, the person who's likely to succeed, if they want to talk about the misery that they're sitting in, good. Listen to them and talk about the misery that you used to sit in. If they want to talk about how bad the meetings are that they've gone to and that's why it's not working, talk about the good meetings that you go to and why it is working. Things have changed. The more and more we practice this, the more and more we work with others, we start to see the little patterns. We start to pick up on the ways in which I remember how I used to be, And people will always say to me when I'm talking to them, oh, Mags, you always have an answer. And it's not that I'm a know-it-all anymore. Hopefully not. But I will have an answer. Because if I'm talking to you about the solution, that's what I'm here to talk to you about. I'm not here to dwell in the common peril. I'm not, like it said out on page 17, I'm not here to talk about all of the common peril in isolation from the common solution. I'll talk about the common peril for a period of time, but I'll hit you with a big chunk of the common solution for the majority of the conversation, because I ain't going to enable you to sit, to continue within the bitter morass of self-pity which you find yourself, So for anybody that is experiencing that from the man that has made the approach, it's not that they're a know-it-all. They're doing their job. They're doing what they're instructed to do. And so it goes on. Sometimes a man is anxious to proceed at once. And you may be tempted to let him do so. That hasn't necessarily happened to me on a great amount of occasions, if I'm really honest. But it does happen from time to time where somebody who has literally, just come off a meeting, I want to get started immediately, when in actual fact they're still very much under the influence of whatever they're using. And it goes on to say that this is sometimes a mistake, because if he has trouble later, it is likely to say that you rushed him. At the very beginning in the doctor's opinion, it talks about the fact, it's Bill W.'s words, in between the two letters from Dr. Silkworth. It sets out very clearly at the bottom of XXVI that although we work our solution in the spiritual as well as the altruistic plane, we favour hospitalisation for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. So, it's really important that if somebody is still within the grips of it, that they're seeking the medical attention that they require. And then when they have that clearer mind, that's when we step in and start, bringing them through the steps. Don't confuse this little line with the fact that we need to take things slowly in bringing somebody through the program. That is not what it's saying. If somebody is still under the influence and requires that medical, advice, that needs to get that guidance, then let them get that guidance. Okay? They have your number. Call me when you're ready after you've sought that advice, because the reality of it is, when they make that next call and they're clearer of mind, always remember what is set out on page 28. We in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of a drowning man. So when they make that call, boom, straight into it. We sought the same escape as the desperation of a drowning man. You get them the book, you start the steps, you work it like the desperation of a drowning man. You do not wait 3 months before you get into the book. You do not do 90 meetings in 90 days before you get into the big book and get a sponsor. 90 meetings in 90 days may well help you to hear the solution in the meetings that you're going to. Knock yourself out. It's not an instruction from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, not whatsoever. What it is that you admit you're powerless, you get a sponsor, you get the big book, and you follow the few simple rules that are set out. It's that simple. There's no hanging about. So please don't misconstrue what it's saying in this paragraph for taking this slowly. Don't misconstrue this for one of the slogans from the wall that says easy does it, because that easy does it is not in relation to the speed at which you go through this program. Easy does it is within the part of the book that it's related to, and we'll get to that point when we get to that part of the book. You know that we always grow where we are planted, okay? So with my sponsees, it's not easy does it, it's get straight stuck in, open the book, where are we at? Let's get into it. You will be most successful with alcoholics if you do not exhibit any passion for crusade or reform. Remember, it tells us that at the bottom of page 89 as well. I was one of those ones that when I finished when I went to my 12th step and had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, I went out there and I was, yes, please, don't be the evangelist is what it says at the bottom of page 89. I've got this and I want you to have it. It's amazing. It's amazing, amazing. Practically throwing it down people's throats, and they run a mile when they see me because they were like, here comes this lunatic. All of a sudden, she's been sober, 3.5, 4 months, and she thinks she's Bill W. herself. Do you know what I mean? It was just, but I learned my lessons through that. I was exceptionally enthusiastic. But what helped me become, I suppose, a little bit more, I don't even know what the word is. Can't describe it. It'll probably come to me later on. But I suppose through bitter experience, I learned to adjust the way that I approach and adjust my style, because if it's too heavy-handed, we don't want to put people off, We're not the evangelists. We're not the reformers. All we're here to do is to pass on our experience that we have the solution. We're not throwing the God thing down people's throats in the first approach. That's not what it's saying within working with others, because we know what we have to do is that they need to be convinced that they're one of us. How do we convince them of that? Then we're taking them through the front cover page right the way through. We're taking them through step 1 so they understand the common peril. They understand the common solution. They're understanding what the unmanageability is, The God thing will come. Yes, we're going to talk about God in our conversations. Of course we are. But in the first instance, where are you at right now? And if they bring up the God thing, it's like, yeah, here's what happened with me. But we've covered that in the previous pages as well. Feel free to read it. And if you've got any questions, let me know. Call me, whatever you need. Never talk down to an alcoholic from a moral or spiritual hilltop. No, I'm not better than you just because I've had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. What I'm doing is I'm making this approach and meeting you where you are at. That's what my sponsor did with me. They met me where I was at. Because there was no way I was going to reach what my sponsor was sitting in front of me. I was like, there's no way I'm going to reach that level of knowledge. But there's no way their experience is the same as mine. They just met me where I was at. And the reality of it is, I didn't want to be my sponsor. This guy approached me and he was the last person I wanted to approach me. But here I am nearly 7 years down the line and that guy is still my sponsor and holds me accountable. Is he the person that I want to be my sponsor? Is he the bestest friend in the world? Yes, he is. But is he the person that I thought would be my sponsor? Absolutely not. He's quite the opposite, because what I thought I needed was never going to work for me. Who I thought I needed was never going to work for me. Even in that respect, I had to set aside every single thing I thought I knew to have a new experience with God with this person. Do I want to be my sponsor today? No, I do not. Lorraine's laughing because you know. Sorry for bringing you into the conversation all the time this morning, Lorraine. It's just because you're so wonderful at all of this stuff. But the point I'm making is, this is where we become, through this working with others, we become our truest, most authentic, genuine selves. That's what working with others has taught me too. You know, how to build a relationship with people, how to meet them where they're at, not to be that prideful Miss Know-it-all. No, that's not what this is about. I am here to help you. You might not like what I say, but that doesn't mean to say I'm better than you. It doesn't mean to say that I know more in life about you. But certainly in making the approach at this time, I'm armed with the facts about myself as to how I recovered and had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. You may not necessarily have that. Okay? So there is a differential when we start this journey of sponsorship and sponsee. People might, hierarchy is the wrong word, but there is the teacher and the pupil. But very, very swiftly, we become on that common journey where we stand shoulder to shoulder. And then you become that sponsor, the teacher, and the pupil, the sponsee. And then the journey continues. We're building this group of people, this army of people that are constantly teaching pupil, common solution, common journey. You know, it's a very, very beautiful thing that we're all standing shoulder to shoulder. That's what it's all about. So what I have to do in my job is simply lay out the kit of spiritual tools for his inspection. Show him how they worked for you. Now, remember what that spiritual, the spiritual toolkit is. Don't make up your own. You've got to lay out the simple spiritual toolkit that is described on page 25, where this is what somebody helps to rocket them to the fourth dimension of existence. Where it talks about there is a solution. We talk about, when we were approached by those by whom the problem had been solved, past tense, there was nothing left for us to pick up other than the simple kit of spiritual tools that are laid at our feet. And what happened as a result of that? We found much of heaven and we had been rocketed to the fourth dimension of existence. So the spiritual toolkit that is laid at your feet, remember what that is? Unity, service, recovery. That is all you're talking about right now. You ain't talking to them about all of the spiritual additional stuff that you do outside of your program of recovery. That's not what you're talking to them about. Okay, you may do all of that stuff as additional. Wonderful. Knock yourself out. But the most important thing, even my little dog's getting bored with my voice in the background. If you can hear, he's snoring or sighing. It's, oh, here we go again. This wingding is talking about all of this stuff again. The poor wee pet. The spiritual toolkit that's laid at your feet is the recovery, the 12 steps, the 12 spiritual principles by which you as the individual are guided. Unity, the 12 traditions, the 12 spiritual principles by which our groups are guided. Service, the 12 concepts of world service. The 12 spiritual principles by which the fellowship across the world are guided. Okay, that's 36 spiritual principles where you need to be right in the middle of those 36 spiritual principles, and then that's when we become complete. We need to be right in the middle of that circle in the triangle. That's when we're rocketed to the fourth dimension of existence. This is not the point where you talk about walking up Kilimanjaro for 14 days and living in a cave, that's what's going to solve your problem, because it's not. You know, this is not where you're telling them you've gone on a 10-day silent retreat 4 times a year and that's what's taking you away from your alcoholism, because it's not. Don't confuse the newcomer. That's not what you're here to do. You're there to set out the spiritual toolkit that is part of this program of recovery and nothing else at this stage. I do loads of other stuff and my sponsor's given me loads of ideas of other stuff and we hang out and we do loads of other stuff. But in the first instance, this is what you've got to be given. And I never deviate away from this. Anything else is in addition. As simple as that. And the reality of it is, offering friendship and fellowship. Yeah. Like it talks about on page 17, you know, that camaraderie is indescribably wonderful. The fellowship of people that is this wonderful friendliness that we join together, you know, but what we're joining together in is brotherly and harmonious action around the great news that is held within the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not just giving you fellowship and friendliness and bringing you for a cup of matcha tea every now and again. That's not what's going to fix you. Okay. It might sound dead harsh, but I ain't got time for sitting around drinking matcha all day and talking about life. I have other stuff to do. Do you know what I mean? This program of recovery keeps me busy. Love to have a matcha with you, but we're not sitting for 4.5 hours contemplating our navels. We've got action to take here. You can see a number of people deleting my number from their phone now, can't you? No chance. I don't like matcha. Why would I even be hanging out with her? Anyway, tell him that if he wants to get well, you will do anything to help. I will do anything to help. If you want to sit for a couple of hours and contemplate your navel over a matcha, I'll do it once, but I'm not doing it again. I've been taught by my sponsor, you know, we go with the flow of all of this. These principles that are set out are very clear cut. They're very mastery details, but I meet each individual where they're at. You know, it's a good thing that we can laugh about such a Sally. It talks about that later on, you know, when groups of us get together and talk about all of our antics and our behaviours and the consequences, we can laugh about all of that stuff. You know, there's a certain levity, like it says on page 16 of Phil's story. But underneath all of that, there is deadly earnestness. You know, we must work 24 hours a day. You know, that's what it says. And that's why I have the deadly earnestness with regards to all of this. You know, faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us or we perish. You know, I do this stuff because I'm an alcoholic, not because you are. It's a win-win situation though when we work together and we come together. Prospect and sponsor. That's what it's all about. Here's a golden nugget of information, people, because this happens all the time. So if he's not interested in your solution, i.e. what's included within the program of recovery and having a spiritual awakening as a result of steps, if he expects you to only act as a banker for his financial difficulties, or a nurse for his sprees, happens regularly, you may have to drop him until he changes his mind about getting the actual solution. Because here's the thing, this he may do after he gets hurt some more. And it goes on to be very, very, very specific about that instruction a little bit later on. And how they talk about it is so incredible. It's a really powerful paragraph. I don't know whether we'll get to it today. But yeah, hold up for that one. That's a bit of a cliffhanger if we don't get it to it today. But you know, when that individual is approaching and saying, oh, I need money for such and such, and that's the first thing that they're talking to you about, you know, that becomes a very interesting scenario in the first instance when I started out in this journey of sponsoring people to ascertain, you know, when it's right to give and when it's best not to. Okay. And the instructions are within this chapter very, very clearly about that. I'm not here to give you the money to enable you to continue on the path of destruction, whatever. I'm not here as a medical person because I am not medically qualified. And even if I was medically qualified, I would be sending you to the proper authorities. Because I am here within this fellowship as a sponsor. That's my job and that's my responsibility. And I do not blur those lines. Now, don't get me wrong. There has been times that people in the fellowship have been very generous with their time. They have helped me out in very genuine situations, and that has been to the good. But it has not enabled me to continue to do what I'm doing. And if at any moment it was starting to become that, they dropped me. Okay. And they sought advice from their sponsor as to when would be the best approach to that and what would be the best approach to that. Okay, so they're setting out here some very general principles by which my sponsor then guides me if, I get into a situation with somebody that is only in it for the money. No, that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to provide medical advice. You go to your own people, your own doctors, your own professionals for that. I'm not here to talk to you about whether you should be coming off your medication or not. That's not my business. That's not my expertise. Never will be. Go to your own medical professionals. And anybody in any fellowship that is giving out advice around medical information, what should be taken, what shouldn't be taken around medication, is very misinformed. We are doing a disservice and could be causing harm if we are giving any such opinion on anything to do with medical matters. So please keep that at the forefront of your mind. It goes on then more positively. If he is sincerely interested and wants to see you again, ask him to read this book in the interval. Now, this part, please know, comes within the context of when this book was written, nearly 90 years ago, when there wasn't very many groups, when there wasn't very many sponsors. They were traveling all over the United States, one end of the country to the other end of the country, to get books to people at that point. Okay. We are in a much more privileged position these days with easy access online to parts of the book that you can read, or to be able to send somebody a book within 24 hours. I wouldn't be giving a book to somebody and say, read it and then come back to me. No. I'm sending them the book, asking them when they can get together and starting the book from the front cover page the moment that they get that book. It's as simple as that. Okay. You're guided within working with others to direct them to read more about alcoholism. So do that. Once you've read that, call me and we'll get started. Okay. You might want to direct them to the doctor's opinion, but it's a very complicated chapter for them to read by themselves. So stick to what's suggested. Read more about alcoholism, and then we'll talk in our first session. Simple as that. After doing that, here's the thing. Remember, we are not pushing somebody into this. We are not here to convince them. They have to be convinced by themselves. We're not talking down to them. He must decide for himself whether he wants to go on. He must decide for himself whether he wants to go on. He should not be pushed or prodded by you, his wife, or his friends. You will not become recovered for anybody but yourself. And it goes on to reiterate that later on in the next couple of pages. Even though you talk about it, I want to do this for my children, I want to do this for my wife, I want to do this for my family, I want to... whatever. Because if you're not doing this for yourself, it is not going to happen. If you are not ready for immediate use for yourself to have this program that will enable you to overcome your addiction, then just sit with that for a little bit, because the reality of it is, and this is such a beautiful, powerful line, highlight, underline, exclamation mark, whatever you need to do, asterisk around that line. Your prospect, if he is to find God, if, that very conditional word, because if you do the work, it works. If you don't, it won't. If he is to find God, the desire must come from within. The desire must come from within him. And if you're sitting here in this room or listening to this, thinking that we're going to be talking to you until 40, 50, 60 years to convince you, no. We're here to share how we recovered. We're here to share how the solution has worked for us. It needs to come from within you. That's a very different approach to what some people might be sitting here thinking, that what's going to happen is you're going to get this through osmosis. And that somebody's just going to come and hand you a golden silver platter and just going to hand it all over to you and it's all going to be soaked up. No, that's not how it happens. Nobody came to me with a silver platter, a golden platter, and put it on my lap. No, they did not. This took work. It took effort. But isn't that beautiful? If he is to find God, the desire must come from within. And you need help to find what's within. And that's why you need a sponsor if there's anybody here. That's why we work with others, because what will happen is that this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous will enable you to gain access to that power. You don't need to work out how you gain access, but if the desire is there, we'll show you how to. There's a very, very significant difference. Do not sit and try to work out how you find it. We're going to show you that. The big book sets out very, very clearly. But if you've got a desire to get to know you better and to find out what's going on inside you, because it's nothing on the outside that's your problem, it's everything that's on the inside. But here's the thing, another little caveat. They're very quick. They know what we're like. If he thinks he can do the job in some other way, or prefers some other spiritual approach, encourage him to follow his own conscience. Happy days. If you think you can do it, no bother. Go on ahead. You've got my number. Look forward to hearing from you. Because it then goes on to say, we've no monopoly on God. Like it says in the foreword to the second edition, we've got no monopoly on recovery. You know, in the past 90 years since this book was written, the number of other alternative methods and methodologies that there are to recovery, very, very costly in many respects when we have what's fun and for free, you know. But if they choose to go down that route, grand. Let them go. You leave with a friend. In my experience, in the very short amount of time that I've been doing this, inevitably, the majority of them come back. And if they don't come back to me, they come back to the group and they go with somebody else. That's what this is all about. We're building this network. Doesn't matter who they go to, as long as they are going to be given what the solution is from the big book. It's a cast iron guarantee that they will recover if they do the work. And this is why, as a sponsor, I never deviate. I only stick to what is set out here. The moment anybody deviates and gives somebody a little inkling of something else that they believe to be the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and it actually isn't, we're doing a disservice. But if they choose to go and find something else, great. Wish you well. And when you learn a bit about it, come back and tell me about it too, because I might want to explore it in addition to what I do within my program of recovery. In addition. We merely have an approach that worked for us. 100,000,000%. This approach works for me with bells on. Time and time and time again. It never fails. It never fails. Like it says in the foreword to the first edition, I need go no further for any authentication as to what I need to recover. Nowhere. All of the answers for what I have and how I need to get over it are in the 164 pages, and I extend my reading and everything by exploring other things. But every single day that I have a problem, I revert to the spiritual principles in my toolkit, and that enables me to overcome everything and anything. Powerful. And it's that simple. It really, truly is. But point out that we alcoholics have much in common, and that we would like, in any case, to be friendly, and let it go at that. That's the point that I keep reiterating all the time. We leave with a friend. If you choose to come with me, we're going to become friends anyway. But if you choose not to come with me, then grand. We leave with a friend anyway. And maybe in 6 months, 2 years' time, that little number will crop up in the phone, or a WhatsApp message will come, and they'll be like, can we hook up? Of course we can. Of course we can. 96. I love this. Just because I used to be so disappointed when somebody said, no, Mags, don't worry, I'm going to go with somebody else. I used to take it really, really personally. I used to have to take it to my inventory. This person didn't want to come with me. They didn't ever tell me why they didn't want to come with me, or why they didn't want me to be their sponsor. So I made up a load of stuff in my head as to the reasons why they didn't want to come with me. They think I'm a bitch. Well, they probably did. Yeah. They think I'm too heavy-handed. Well, they probably did. Yeah. They think I'm too much of a big book enthusiast. Yeah, well, they probably did. But what's that got to do with the price of salt? Nothing. I keep going on. So do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. No. You've got plenty to be getting on with. Let me tell you, when you're really deep into this service and this altruistic movement that we're part of, you're not going to be short of people to be able to help. Yesterday, for example, I don't know what was happening. I think the full moon was earlier in the week. So it wasn't the full moon that was disturbing people. There was just a lot of activity going on with people that needed help. Don't know what was happening. But it was a very beautiful thing to be taking these calls and messages and everything. And you know what it was doing? A reminder of, thank God I'm not right there at this time, thank God. I remember what those things used to be like. And to be able to share through bitter experience that it is going to be okay. And even though you don't think it is okay no matter what, as long as you keep on doing what's suggested. The moment that you stop, that's when it all goes pear-shaped. And I know there's some people on the screen today that are experiencing that because they haven't continued to do what they should have been doing. But here they are. They're having a new experience, and it's a very beautiful thing. So if they don't respond at once, guess what we've got to do? Search out another alcoholic and try again. Try and try and try again. If I told you the number of people that I've actually sponsored versus the number of people that I've tried to engage within the program, oh my God, if we were in the results game, my business would be out of business by now. But that's not what we're about. One alcoholic at a time changes the world. One alcoholic at a time. I think we've talked about it before. Oh, she has 16 sponsees and I only have 14, therefore she's more spiritually well than me. Shut up. That's not how it operates, I've only got 6 and I had 10 last week, so I'm feeling really unwell. I think I'm losing my connection with God. Shut up. No, you're not. Just keep on doing the work with you, what you should be doing. If you've got one person, it's going to help you. Do you know what I mean? One alcoholic at a time. Because see, when you're sitting with the one, the other 15 don't matter anyway. One person at a time. You're fine. Yeah, wait till you hear this. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept the eagerness with the eagerness that you offer. Yeah, 100%. You're cast iron guarantee going to find somebody if you're doing what you should be doing and approaching the newcomer. And approaching the people that need a new experience. You're not going to be without somebody for long. I had one of my sponsees call me at the beginning of the week. I've got no sponsees. I'm desperate. Well, be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you wish for. 4 days later, she's inundated. Really? Anybody that needs help? Okay, there you go. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. And all she keeps sending me is smiley face and emoji because she knows. And all of those several that have been sent through, she's probably only picked up one. But that's great, because all you need is one to get started. You know? You're not on a performance review here, you know? You're not going to have a one-to-one with your line manager. You know, you're whatever, you know, this is, yeah, it's not a performance review, but when you're doing a good job and staying close to him and doing his work well, you're going to receive in abundance. Those third step promises on page 63, you know, your little plans and designs no longer matter. Stay close to him and do his work well. Where you enlarge your spiritual life is through work and self-sacrifice with others. That's what this is all about. So we find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you. Complete another waste of time. You do you and I'll do me. I've got plenty of people to be getting on to see. If you leave such a person alone, he may soon become convinced that he cannot recover by himself. He'll become convinced. He'll be moved by the evidence of his own life, the misery in which they're sitting in, the progression of the illness. It gets worse, never better. All of those things that we know having gone through the program will become true and apparent in their life. That's when they will come back. We hear it all the times in the room. I went over and tried to do something else by myself. I thought 1 meeting a week was going to be enough for me. And then I thought that, you know, I didn't need the meetings. Then I lost contact with everybody in the fellowship. Well, how's that all going for you? Is what my sponsor says. I hate when he says that. Well, how's that going for you? Obviously, the response is not very well. To spend too much time on any one situation is to deny some other alcoholic an opportunity to live and be happy. Honestly, do not let this drain on your energy. Okay? I've given you the information. You've got my number. You know I'm here. You're off to the next one. You're just building your portfolio. That's all you're doing if you want to talk about it like that. You're just building your network every single time. That's all you're doing. One of our fellowship. Notice that word fellowship because I'm going to keep on pointing that out. Uppercase F, capital F if you want to call it that. Fellowship. We're talking about the fellowship of the Spirit here. We're talking about the fellowship of recovered alcoholics. One of our fellows of recovered alcoholics. Whereas on page 17, they're talking about the fellowship of the newcomer when they come in, the fellowship that they wish to seek. Okay, there is this friendliness, there is this camaraderie, and that continues the whole way through. But as you have a spiritual awakening as the result of the step, the type of fellowship that you're part of is very, very different. It's a fellowship of recovered alcoholics that are doing this work. So one of our fellowship failed entirely with his first half dozen prospects. We're talking about Bill W. here. We know this from the forward to the second edition. It tells us that even before we get into the recovery pages. He often says that if he had continued to work on them, he might have deprived many others who have since recovered of their chance. So he often says that if he had continued to work on them, he might have deprived many others who have since recovered of their chance. He wasted no time. If you go back to those pages in the forward to the second edition, here's what it actually says. He failed miserably in his first 6 months, if you want to call it failure, because it's really not. The reality of it is, even within those 6 months where he didn't get a prospect to bring through the steps, he still remained recovered. He was doing what he needed to do as part of his 12th step. Okay? I do this work because I'm an alcoholic, not because you are, but it's a win-win situation. I said that at the top of the conversation. What he experienced was that he suddenly realized in order to save himself, he must carry this message to another alcoholic. And of course, that's when he met Dr. Bob. It goes on to say that it also indicated that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, was vital to permanent recovery, life-giving to permanent recovery. Not just the permanent recovery of myself, not just the permanent recovery of the sponsee sitting in front of me, the permanent recovery across the world. Because the reality of it is, people, we are in the miracle business. We are in the world of changing the world of recovery, one alcoholic at a time. Because when I sit with somebody in another part of this city, I'm moving the energy of permanent recovery across the city. When I sit with somebody in another continent, even on Zoom, I'm moving the energy of permanent recovery across the continents. Now, don't anybody think that that's me being egocentric and that I am the big I am because of that. I'm not. I'm telling you the reality of what goes on when I carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous and help more people. Who would have thought that we've moved the energy in Australia, in South America, in South Africa, in England, in the wee town down the bottom of Ireland? Who would have known just because we do this? Building groups across the world that are ensuring permanent recovery across the world. And if you're sitting in meetings not doing any of that, what are you doing? Looking after yourself? Altruism? Self-sacrifice? I think not. So, on that little note, let's continue. Suppose now you're making your second visit to a man. He has read this volume and says he's prepared to go through the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Happy days. In our instance, because of our accessibility to people, you've given them the big book, they've read more about alcoholism, you're showing up to do your first session. Having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know you're available if he wishes to make a decision and tell his story, but do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult somebody else. We've talked about that already. I might have given them the introduction to here's me, here's the solution, here's your big book, here's the meeting to go to, here's the details of all the meetings, and then they decide to go with my mate down the road. Don't be offended. You've still done your job. You've still carried the message and got them to the solution. Just because it's not with you, don't take a resentment. Or as they say here in Belfast, don't take the nick. Don't get in a huff. Don't be a huffy pants because they haven't selected you. Little old you, the centre of the universe that's carrying a message beyond all Bill W's expectations. Don't go down that route. Just you move on to somebody else. Or go have a cup of matcha by yourself and sit and reflect on why this is having the negative impact on you that it is. Because really, you need to get over yourself and just move on and do your job. That's why I love this program. Because no matter what, I have to keep looking at myself. I have to keep looking within. I have to keep looking at the blocks to the awareness of God's presence that are inside me to keep on moving forward, to be of use to other people. Because the moment I start to think, well, do you know what? See this malarkey, I'm not approaching anybody. I'm wasting too much money on books. My telephone bill's extortionate because I keep sending these messages to people that don't have WhatsApp. Do you know what? I'm hanging out my boots here. I'm not doing anything. Do you know what I'd say? Good luck with that. Good luck. Because that's only going to end up one way. Right the way back at step one. Powerless, over alcohol, life unmanageable, like never ever before. Anyway, I think you're getting the message from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's very clear cut. It's very straightforward. I'm going to finish on this paragraph because this is a good one. Because see, if this is you and you're sitting in this right now and you don't know what to do with the program and you don't want to sponsor, or you think you don't like the person that is sponsoring you, or there's somebody, if you're sponsoring and this is you and you're wondering what we do here with this individual, how else can I help them? Very clear cut. He may be broken homeless. That was me when I met my sponsor. Totally and utterly broke and homeless. If he is, you might try to help him about getting a job or give him a little financial assistance. But you should not deprive your family or creditors of money they should have. In the first instance, when we start sponsoring, we're going, oh yes, we'll help everything and everyone. We've got our own lives that we need to be rectifying. We've got our financial amends that we're making. We're continuing to make our amends with our family, friends, employers, etc., as we continue on our program of recovery. Perhaps you will want to take the man into your home for a few days, but be sure to use your discretion. Be certain he will be welcomed by your family and that he is not trying to impose upon you for money, connections, or shelter. Permit that and you only harm him. And it goes on to give more detail on that in the next couple of pages. My sponsor enabled me to find somewhere to live. My sponsor assisted me in finding somewhere to live. My sponsor assisted me in getting help with benefits. My sponsor assisted me in putting me in touch with other people. Did he bring me into his home? No, he didn't. Did another member of the fellowship? Yes, they did, for a short, agreed period of time. Did I take advantage of that? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And they learned a lesson, and I learned a lesson. Okay? But what those individuals did was they were trying to navigate me as a very difficult and manipulative individual. But they also knew that I was desperate for this. I've asked my sponsor about this. Why did you keep on going? Because they knew how desperate I was. They could see that I was in the grips. They could see that I was trying really, really hard. But I was in the grips of my addiction. I literally couldn't get a breath. I couldn't get a breath. And ultimately, even with their support and help, I ended up having to be locked up for 3.5 months. Okay? Did they give me money? No, they did not. Did they give me somewhere to sleep for a period of time? Yes, they did. Was it an extended period of time? No, it wasn't. Was I continued to use whilst I was there? Yes, I was. And that stopped because they knew that it was only harming me. Now, without going into all of the details of that, the ifs, buts and the maybes, you might have loads of questions around, oh, well, you're saying you don't do that and then they did. That's not what it's about. I'm giving you a very, very brief overview of how they helped me. So please take this piece of information in the spirit in which I mean it. There are times when it's right to provide and there's times when it's not. And my sponsor was taking counsel from his sponsor as to the best way forward. But ultimately, there was no helping me at that time. And I had to be locked up for 3.5 months. So therefore, when they had to stop giving me that support, they had to drop me, like is suggested in the big book. They were doing it from a place of understanding and effectiveness. They were following the clear-cut directions. They never give their personal opinion. And ultimately, by making the decision to let me go and to drop me, as per the words in the book, I got to exactly where I needed to be. Because there was something else working in my life, and there was something else, that power that is greater than us, working in their lives. Because the reality of it is, this is where they took their stance. You will be making it possible for him to be insincere. You may be aiding in his destruction rather than in his recovery. My sponsor had an exceptionally difficult decision to make. And I will never forget the night before I was due to go into that treatment facility. I called him to tell him that I wasn't going to go in. And the phone went silent. He didn't know what to say. Because he knew if I didn't go into that treatment facility on the Friday, that I would have died. And that's the God's honest truth. For some reason, the desire came from within me. Like it says in the book, for some reason, the desire came from within me. And on the Friday morning, I called my sister and asked her to take me to the treatment facility. I had no contact with my sponsor before I went in on that Friday morning. And I had no contact with him for the 3.5 months that I was in there. He did not know where I was. He had no contact with my family. I wasn't going to meetings. They had no contact with me in the treatment facility because I wasn't allowed to be near anybody, or I was not able to contact anybody. I didn't have his address. I didn't have my phone. So ultimately he didn't know, but he followed the clear-cut directions, and that's why I sit here today. I got out of that treatment facility 3.5 months later on the Friday. On the Sunday, my sister allowed me to have my phone back. And the first person I called at 9 o'clock on the Sunday morning was my sponsor. We worked the steps like the desperation of a drowning man, and we've never looked back. Because in working with others, we've built an army across wherever, and we stand shoulder to shoulder on this common journey. And that's because he followed the clear-cut directions set out in this book. That's how critical this is. That's how vital this is. That's what permanent recovery really and truly is. And I am so grateful that he did what he did to enable me to sit here with you guys to do what you do. So thank you.